Hello everyone, welcome to the GAA Rounders show. Tonight we have a very special show. We are joined by Adrian Kelly here from Baseball Ireland. Adrian, thanks million for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Not at all. Adrian here is a player who has actually been involved in baseball and rounders. So, we're just going to get his take on the differences and the similarities in the sport, and just kind of have a bit of a chat, just, for anyone out there that doesn't really know, like, how the two are so closely linked and yet so different. So, Adrian, if you wouldn't mind, just tell us, a little bit about your background. As I mentioned earlier, you have been involved in both sports. So, if you wouldn't mind, just telling us a little bit about that.
No problem at all. I've wore all my gear for your benefit. I don't normally go around dressed like this, but anyway. No, it's great to join the conversation. I think the webinars you're doing are fantastic. I've watched them all, and I think it's really, there's some interesting discussion points there and kind of thoughts that we can all kind of learn from. I think, particularly the stuff you were talking about last week in terms of batting order, etc. But we'll talk about that later. I suppose I've been involved in playing and coaching baseball for the last 11 years or so. I joined in 2012. I suppose I first started playing baseball. I was 36 at the time, so I know I don't look that old, but there you go. And I've been lucky enough, I suppose. I won an All Ireland with the Greystones Mariners in 2014 in the senior division, and I also kind of played in US, in Arizona in the World Baseball Club Championships a couple of years ago, back in 2017, which was a great experience. And played in Canada. And I've played a little bit international club as well at Ashbourne. We kind of host a competition there every year, so I've played in a few of those as well, which has been great crack. And it's been a really interesting journey for me. I mean, I was a coach as well on the Irish under-18 team. We went to Italy for the European Championships. That was Division A, so we were playing really high caliber teams like Germany, Italy, France, the top tier nations in baseball in Europe. And also the Netherlands would be, like, statistically, it would always be number one or thereabouts in the senior men's and the kind of under 18. We had a really talented US team. Mostly, well, they're all Irish passport holders, but a lot of US kids as well, and a really high caliber coaching staff as well, guys that have been in the game for many years, led by Bill O'Sullivan, actually, who coaches college baseball. So there was a team of 6 coaches, and to spend a week in Italy with those guys, just seeing how they operate and see the level of professionalism and even the things they do in the downtime in terms of trying to build team morale and team spirit. And, it was just, you wouldn't get that experience anywhere else. So it was brilliant. But I mean, last year I contacted Ronan because I was interested in getting involved with the Rounders. The lads up there in Carrickmacross have a great outfit as well. And I actually I'm from Clonus originally. And I have a strong GAA background myself. My father used to be chairman of the club in Clonus for many years. I coached teams at all levels, including my teams. I played Gaelic football for about 16 years, and in Clonus at kind of various levels. And then and I went to school in Carrickmacross for a couple of years as well. So I know a lot of lads that Ronan there know, mostly older guys than him though, my age. So, but no, it was great getting involved with the guys. I mean, they were very open, very welcoming, open to new ideas. I've learned an awful lot myself as well, just from listening to them and trying to pick up some of the rounder skills, which I'm still in awe of, really, because some of the catches, catching line drives, catches in the outfield, diving catches, barehanded, all that stuff. Been really impressive, and also just trying to look at the different, we can talk about it more of course, but looking at the different types of skills in both games and how we can learn from each other, I suppose.
Yeah, and like that was one of the things I was going to ask. Say, like, you're obviously coming from baseball to rounders, and I know there's probably people who have done vice versa. But what would you see as kind of the main similarities in the sport? I mean, a lot of people would say that they are very similar, but maybe not know enough as to the details on what actually is the same.
Well, I suppose to the untrained eye, they both look very similar, but there are. It's probably easier to point out the differences in some ways. Yeah,
I know. That's why I went with the harder question first.
Yeah, I know. Funny enough, there's a friend of mine. He's based in Vancouver actually, and he's a baseball historian, and he talks about how baseball, in his view, grew out of the game of rounders in America, and it was mostly the Irish that played rounders and baseball at the turn of the 19th century, and and even in the major leagues in around about 1919, 1920, the Irish dominated the major leagues, and they were the best baseball players out there. And now the baseball had kind of a rough and tumble image at that point, and they tried to clean it up in his view by Americanizing it a bit more, introducing the gloves, introducing things that would make it kind of different, because it was all about drinking and brawling and stuff, and they had that kind of image in the early 19th century. Not that we do that here in Ireland, but that's the kind of image it had, and that's kind of how baseball evolved, was to try and Americanize the kind of the rounders that went over there. That's kind of the theory behind it. But I suppose one of the key differences, obviously the equipment is very different. You get to wear gloves to catch the ball, big gloves as opposed to football gloves, which I sometimes wear playing rounders. The bats are there's a lot of regulation in both sports, of course, but I think maybe a little bit more in baseball, because there's regulation in terms of the bat sizes you can use. You can only use like a -3 bat, which is a pretty big bat. Actually, I have one here. This is the one. Every player in the competition in America, when I was there a few years ago, got one of these. Is a Marucci bat, wooden bat, World Series. It was the 30-year anniversary. That's a 32-inch, and that'd be kind of the smallest bat you'd use in baseball. You wouldn't use much smaller than that. And rounders, you can use smaller bats, but there's a reason for that, in my view, and that is that the kind of pitch that's involved in rounders, you need to be able to cover maybe more of the plate, because the zone is a little bit bigger, and you need that bit more flexibility with it. Plus, I learned to my detriment that even when you smash the ball, it actually doesn't travel. It kind of hangs in the air a little bit. It doesn't travel like a baseball. So that's another difference. The ball is different. The baseball is kind of one of the baseballs here somewhere. That looks like a background, but it's not actually. It's real. This is a baseball. This is a baseball that was caught. That was the final play in the Ireland against Germany game back in 2018 when we beat Germany. That was the ball that was caught in the outfield. So your man signed it for me, Liam Nicholson. If he's ever watching this podcast, thanks Liam for that. But you can see the ball is slightly bigger and it's heavier. And when it gets wet, it gets really heavy. So in baseball, if the ball, after a couple of plays, you're throwing, that ball is out of the game, it'll never be used again. Whereas in rounders, we use obviously the slitters, and you can reuse those. It's a bit more cost effective. Whereas on a wet day, you might go through, in one game, might go through at least 6 balls, you might go through 10 balls. So it can get expensive. And they're only ever used in training after that. They're never reintroduced to a game. So there's a glove. There's lots of rules, which are, there's some people will be watching this that mightn't be that familiar with the rules, but you'd be familiar, you guys, in terms of the tag up rule, we'll say in rounders or in baseball, where the ball gets caught in the air, you have to tag up to the last base. That's not in rounders. And also, which confused me a lot when I started, was when the ball gets caught in the outfield, the runners keep running, even on a third out. And I was like, is that not the third out? Because you catch the ball in baseball, everybody walks off the pitch, it's out. But if there's runners on bases and rounders, they keep playing and keep running, and they keep scoring. So you have to get that ball back in pretty quickly. Yeah. But I think what's the thing that caught me out the most was not running on a hit. So once you make contact with the ball, I'd be 10 feet down the baseline before I'd even realize where the ball had gone. Because in baseball, you have to go, and every split second counts. You have to make 90 feet to the base. It's 80 feet in rounders, and that's something I really, Ronan will tell you there, I struggled to stay in the batter's box at all. And then, but it took me a couple of games really to get my head around that. And it was such a short season as well. I think I would have benefited if I'd played a few more games before it really got serious, because we only had, 5 games? Yeah. So, and the first game we played Glenbarntown, which is a pretty serious game as well. And the first ball, I got thrown out because I left the batter's box. The second one, I fouled it off on a third pitch, which you can do in baseball. You can just keep fouling it off, and it's even if it goes dead, you still get another, keep going. The record for that in the major leagues is 27 of those at one at bat. But once you do that in rounders, you're out. So that was my first 2 at bats, and then I sort of got into it after that. Got 2 hits, thank God. I remember Rowan shouting at me, "Come on, would you hit the ball?" No pressure. But anyway, so yeah, that's kind of some of the key things. Obviously, there's a lot of differences, but the similarities. Listen, the positions are the same number of players on the pitch. It's the pitching and the bowling is very similar in terms of the strikes and also and the strategy. Obviously, the velocity of the ball is a lot different in baseball. It's an overarm pitch, and it's an underarm throw in rounders. But the skill sets are very comparable, and the bowler is a very, very important position, just like it is in baseball.
Were you shocked, Adrian, when you started to play rounders? Would you say it was a shock to the system that, well, this is probably not what you thought it was, really? Because
that's a very good question. Was I shocked? You know what I was shocked by? I was shocked at how quickly we were into the game, because in rounders or in baseball, there's a real prep before the game. If you're a home team, you're there 2 hours beforehand. You do your BP, you do your infield, outfield, you do all your stretches, your running, your warm-ups, and it's all kind of Americanized from that standpoint. It's all down to injury prevention and stuff. So you have a lot of time to acclimatize before the game starts, whereas it was more kind of get out of the car, hand the jersey and onto the pitch, pretty much, throw the ball about a bit in the car park. And
more
that
time
kind
efficient.
of shocking. That kind of efficiency of time, yeah. And the guys, like, somebody says it's a bit like snooker and pool. We kind of get straight down to it. It's like, yeah, a little bit like that. Yeah. So that kind of took me back, because you're kind of usually kind of a bit more time to acclimatize. And I was nagging the guys to get there a bit earlier as well, so we could do a bit more.
Are you surprised that there's not more people playing it, Adrian?
I am. It's a GAA sport, and every other GAA sport seems to be massive. So I really don't understand, and hopefully that's going to change. I think it will. But I think it's so accessible as a sport, and you can play it. Like, I'm 45 now, but you can play it right up. Very competitively, as we know, up to like 50s anyway. I'd say, as long as you keep yourself in shape. And the great thing about it is, it's about knowledge of the game. So the more you understand about it, the more, not that you get away with, but the more you can still be very effective as a player. And I think it's one of those sports that it's very hard to play team sports when you get into your 40s, because unless you can, with injuries and ankle injuries and knee injuries, you can't really play soccer and Gaelic football as much. And I think this is something that, if anybody's listening out there is interested in trying it, it's so easy to get into and get involved with, and so enjoyable. I mean, the thing that shocked me as well was the passion the guys had for it. These guys, your guys love to play it, and they really want to win, and the diving catches and the courage on display and the commitment to each other and the communication and all of that. It's very inspiring, actually. I thought it was great. Whereas baseball, it can be like that, but I don't know if it's just as in terms of raw passion is the same as rounders, if that makes any sense. And it's similar, I suppose, to most Gaelic sports, where it is very passionate and very kind of, everybody kind of gives everything to it.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's
community in it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. That's kind of, that's what the whole GAA is built on, is that sense of community and club, and it's probably stemming from that. And Adrian, I just wanted to ask you. Ronan was saying earlier about when you came into rounders first. Now, I'm just kind of curious from my own point of view, and I'm sure there's people at home the same. When you were coming from baseball into rounders, did you kind of think, well, I've been playing baseball, we're playing internationally, this will be grand, I'll be able to slot in? Or did you kind of think, oh God, it's going to be tough to make the transition? Or how was it when you did go into Carrick Cross there? You're kind of like, I'll be well ahead of these lads, to be able to show them a few things, and then go, oh, hold on, actually maybe it could be the other way around.
Yeah, that is I did kind of think that. Real humble. No. I kind of thought I could hit the ball, and I said, listen, I never had any doubt. I said, listen, I'll be able to hit that ball, because we do that much practice hitting the bloody ball. I have my own pitching machine at the house, and when I started playing baseball, I used to get out there 6 nights a week and on that pitching machine to try and the hardest thing I found was actually learning how to throw the ball properly. And someone said I still don't throw it properly, but I certainly wouldn't have the arm strength that some guys have. But I think what was the hardest thing for me adapting to rounders? It was plate discipline, as in knowing when to run and what ball you just hit. I just really struggled with that. But anyway, hopefully I'm getting better. What I figured out in the end was, if you get over the ball, keep it low and hard. And if the runner, if the fielders have their back to you, as in it's gone through the infield, well then you're running. Other than that, you're not. And if obviously if it's in the air, well then you kind of have to run. If it's you know, because you're probably going to get caught anyway in rounders.
Would-
You know,
would you
the fielders cover so much ground in rounders. That's the other really impressive thing. It really is. And catching it bare hand, you actually have to get there and set up for the catch much earlier than you do in baseball. Like it can be, like I play centre field in baseball a lot, and to cover centre field with a glove is actually much easier than it is in rounders by virtue of the fact you have that glove. As in, you can saunter over the ball. Not that we do too often. You can do your best, of course, but there's that room for error in terms of catching the ball. It's just much easier in my mind catching it with a glove. Sorry, Ron, you're going to say?
No, I was just saying there. Which of the games did you find the fastest pace for thinking? I found that I played baseball only a few times. I found that although baseball would be regarded as a faster game, I found you needed to be way, way quicker thinking in rounders, because you could almost make a mistake in baseball and get away with it for a few seconds, whereas in rounders you simply just won't. Like,
I think that's a very good point. I think the thinking on your feet is at different points in the game for rounders and baseball. For example, I think stealing bases is probably one of the most exciting parts of baseball, which isn't a feature of rounders at all. And that's something that you really need to be on your toes for, because you're watching the timing of the pitcher, you're watching the foot position of the pitcher, and as soon as his front foot plants, you can start running to the next base. He doesn't even have to throw the ball, and it's and that creates a lot of excitement. I mean, I've seen guys steal all the way to home from first without the pitcher ever even throwing the bloody ball. As in, he steals the second, gets set up again, to steal the third, he gets set up again. Next thing, the guy just he steals home, and it's a calamity. And in that context, we talk about fast thinking. If the guy has thrown the ball, the catcher is such an important position in baseball because he needs to know where to pick off the runner. And so they're both but I think the decision making for me in rounders it is more at the plate, where you need to be very careful about watching where your runners are, where you got to pick to place that ball if you can, and also what kind of hit you got to place and when to run. I just think that's that. Whereas it's more on base decision making in baseball. It's kind of no brainer in baseball and for hitting in terms of pitch selection is really important, and you can't, otherwise you're swinging at the air. But once you make contact, you're gone. You have to go. So that decision is out of your control. So I think they're both equally, I think, cerebral games, if I can put it like that. But it's just different aspects of them.
Yeah, no, and like I'd fully agree with that. That the thought process, it's just at different points. And then, as you were saying, you kind of have that little bit of time sometimes in baseball, especially even on the fielding side, because as you were saying about when the ball is hit, you don't have to worry about getting the ball back in, if that's the third out, so
that's right.
And so Ronan's point of like you don't have that split second, because like in rounders, if you catch that ball, you need to know straight away this is being launched home,
That's
so
right.
you can't afford, like, even if you take a second in the outfield, I mean, like, it only takes 3 to 4 seconds to travel the length of the base. So like, they're practically halfway there, and it's too late if you take that.
That's right.
Now you've obviously you mentioned that you've played Glamorgan and you've played a few games. Is there anything that you're looking at in rounders players and you're like, God, I'd love if some of our guys in baseball were able to do that? Or are you thinking, God, maybe there's a few players there that could do well in that? Or are you looking at your baseball team and thinking, God, maybe if we got a couple of these lads to come along to rounders practice, they might be able to help us. Now I know you are in the All-Ireland finals, so you probably don't need a whole lot of help. But you have had a very successful year. But I just kind of wonder.
Lads did come down and give us a dig out, and it was very interesting because some of them were massive hitters, like Dominic and them. They were massive hitters. And we were kind of looking at it at the start, going, right, we're out of our depth here. It's a bigger field we're going to need soon. But I think that the lads probably enjoyed it, Adrian, to be honest, wouldn't they?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, in terms of what we could benefit from rounders, just speaking with my baseball hat on here, literally, is probably looking to how you guys feel the ball and the athleticism around that. I think there's definitely, certainly. I don't want to insult anybody here on either side, but there's very strong level of athleticism in rounders. I mean, the guys are covering so much ground out there. It's incredible. That was the thing nearly I was most impressed with was how the outfielders cover the field. In terms of rounders and the other way, there's many things, of course, that we can benefit from players and rounders playing baseball. But the things that we can bring to rounders, and it's all about sharing knowledge, and we're all learning here. I think there's a couple of things that we can all be working on. And baseball it benefits from so much American theory because so much money is poured into the sport over there that some stuff is just research to death. And there's things that I think will work on rounders very well, and we can all kind of improve both sports. And one of them is I think ownership in the infield is in very defined positions and very defined lines of who has what ball and what play, backing up the outfield, routinely. I mean, in baseball, you'll see guys running 30, 40 yards to back up a catch. You don't necessarily see that in rounders. I think we need to see more of that stuff. I think that's helpful.
Interesting.
The backing up the infield, you'll see guys in baseball running 50 yards to back up a first baseman who may or may not drop a ball. You'll see a second baseman running behind the first baseman, directly behind it, if there's no runners on. So there's different situational stuff that you can drill into teams, which could be really beneficial under pressure, which you mightn't necessarily think of. And also a very, very simple thing, which is a real takeaway for me, I think, and people make a mistake. Say you fumble a ball, picking the infield, is to double clutch it, tap, to settle yourself and plant your feet before you make that throw. The ball does the work. You don't need to rush a throw, particularly in the infield. It's more important that it's thrown accurately. And I've seen that, and I've kind of talked to players about that, about under pressure, you receive a bad throw, or you make an error. An error creates another error typically. So you got to break that cycle, in my opinion. And I think that's a very good little thing's always drilled into baseball players. If you fumble or drop it, tap, as in settle yourself, and then it's like a little mental cue and make that throw. Make sure your front foot, your opposite foot's in front, it's planted, and you're in the right body position. And just those little tips. But there's so much, I think, that the sports can learn from each other.
Did the stats confuse you, Adrian, at the start?
Well, I just use baseball stats. So I just brought my baseball scorebook and just scored it the way I saw it. Just to keep track of batting stats and that, which I think really helped the team just analyse where they're at. So I hope it helped anyway, in terms of just giving feedback to players in terms of how they were doing.
Is there anything left of the stat sheet from the last game? By the way?
No, it was. I took a photograph of it before it disintegrated in the rain. It was like the day from hell in the semi-final down in Longford that day. My God, and I have to say, I was so impressed with the grit the guys showed as well, because both those semi-finals were on a knife edge at various stages, and the weather on day two for the replay was just, you wouldn't put a dog out in it. And I just thought the guys really dug deep. And I said to the guys, like we said at the start of the guys, it's whoever wants it most here. A day like that is just whoever wants it most.
It can also be carnage and rounders in the rain, can't it? Really.
Oh yeah.
No
every sport. Oh yeah. In baseball now, if it can be rained off very easy. They're very conscious of injuries and stuff, particularly because the ball's been thrown that bit harder. You can slip and hit somebody in the head or something, when they're pitching the ball. Because we have some guys that can throw in the 70s, 70 mile an hour, and you don't want to get hit with a wet baseball at 70 miles an hour. Even with a helmet on, it hurts.
I don't think you want to be hit by a wet sliotar in the rain too hard either.
No.
Well, that is true.
Never mind the baseball.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So then, do we have to be worried about just poaching any Rounders players away from the game then into baseball, or do you think we're safe enough that we can exist side by side?
I think looking at it, people can play both. I don't see why one would you need to be exclusive to either, because they both complement each other, themselves in so many ways. And I mean, the things I've learned, just catching the ball, I still catch it one-handed. It's much more natural for me, and I know that doesn't fill people with confidence, but I feel more comfortable that way. But Paddy and a few of the lads on the team were trying to show me catch it in your fingers, and lads that would played hurling and are really good at catching the ball. So, but if you can catch it barehanded, you can catch it with a bloody baseball glove, which is the good news. So a lot of baseball players can benefit from playing rounders as well, I think.
It's interesting. Adrian, you actually played the two of them the one day. I think, was it against Screen? And then
That's right. That's right.
It can be done. I can tell you that. It can be done.
I played both the one day, yeah. So I got on and scored a run against Green, and then once drove down to a baseball match and played 9 innings then after that. So no wonder I'm confused. Oh man. But anyway, no, it's been nothing but positive for me anyway. And the guys have been great, and the sportsmanship is great as well. I just think it's a great thing to be involved with. And the baseball, actually, we have a few new teams entering this year. So we have 16 teams now this year in baseball if we ever get going. So we're actually having 3 divisions this year. We have an A division and we've got 2 B divisions, an upper and a lower. So because we've got 2 new teams, completely new, as in, well, they had like junior teams or had like juvenile teams in before. But one of them is just coming up to the senior ranks for the first time. So it should be an interesting year. I think what both sports can grow and flourish in this country. I don't see why not. And I think Irish people are natural baseball and rounders players. They're a natural eye for hitting the ball. Hitting the ball is a very natural thing, it seems, to Irish people. That's why they dominated the major league ranks for so long in America, because I think we've a lot of natural attributes which suit the sport.
Yeah, and I suppose back then it was a lot. It was more similar to rounders with the underarm pitch that they had as well. Because
that's right.
I was actually doing a little bit of research, and there's a player that was only born down the road from my own club, Iron Eagles. You probably come across him, Tommy Bond. Yeah, just down the road.
One of our awards named after the Tommy Bond Award. And Danny Leonard was born in Cavan. He's recognised as the first Irish baseball professional player. He played in the 1860s, actually, with the Cincinnati Red Stockings, as they were called back then. So we have a lot of, and we've the claim to fame as well. The O'Neill brothers in Galway were 4 brothers from the same family who played Major League Baseball, and there's not many of those 4 brothers that actually made the major leagues. Like, there's only 750 players at any one time globally that are major league players. And one of the things as well, I was actually speaking to an ex-Major League player yesterday, Simon Pond, who's based in Vancouver. Simon was over here coaching a couple of years back, and I was telling him about rounders, and he's fascinated about hearing more. He's a guy who hit a home run in Fenway Park for the Toronto Blue Jays against the Red Sox, and he's done all that stuff. He was a pro player for 13 years. But we have those conveyor belt of coaches coming over to Ireland every year, in non-COVID times, and I think there's no reason why rounders can't benefit from some of that coaching as well, particularly injury prevention and all that sort of stuff. A lot of good stuff there.
Yeah, no, and I mean, like, something that I would have always said that, rounders can learn so much from baseball, not just like in terms of the skills now, but obviously, as much as I love rounders, I would have to admit that baseball is probably slightly more well known on a global level than rounders is. But
at the moment,
for the moment, yes.
Yeah.
But and I know you mentioned earlier that you were like, oh, I don't know why there's not more teams now. And some of the feedback that we'd have heard would be that rounders isn't as visible. Like, so say, like, unless you actually go to a game, it's not easy to find like recordings of games or like even snippets. But do you think that that's something that, like, is it a trick that rounders has been missing? Like, I know they're planning on live streaming the finals for this coming year, so, like, they are making steps forward. But do you think that that's something that they really probably
I think that's a really important point. I mean, we did it for the first time back in 2018. We hosted the European Championships, senior men's C division in Ashbourne, and we had great crowds there. We had up to 1,500 people in attendance to watch those games in Ashbourne, which is a full bespoke baseball pitch. It's a really, really good setup. But we decided to try and do it ourselves. We live streamed the games on Facebook, and we had, at one point, we had something like 300,000 views. 300,000 views on the final, Ireland against Greece. And so we were able to advertise and do all sorts of good things. And it's that sort of stuff I think Rounders needs to think about. And you have all the resources in the world there, with Crow Park and the GAA behind you. I think it's just about trying to make that next step to develop the sport. And there's absolutely no reason why not. And I think you'll certainly have all the support that baseball can give you here in Ireland. Anyway, I know the guys are very open to that, and we'll do whatever we can to help that progression.
Yeah, and it just when you mentioned about working together, and that, I know you've actually you've kind of organised some like friendly matches, as it were, between rounders and baseball. Do you think that's something that both organisations in Ireland could look at going forward? Maybe get some sort of a formalised compromise rules going, or like would there be the appetite for that on the baseball side?
I think the way, yeah, I mean, we had a game last year, just a training game, and I know we played Mullahorn just there for the crack a couple of years back in 2014. But there's no reason why we couldn't have like an all-star version of that, because we do have an all-star team. It's called the President's Nine that we play every July, and that plays in the international competition. And it would be super easy, I think, to slot in a kind of a hybrid a Rounders baseball game as well at that event. And that's an event now, as again in non-COVID times, that we usually get hundreds of people along to, and you can have it anywhere, of course, but Ashbourne's one potential venue. There are kind of international baseball centre there, or some Rounders ground, wherever it might be. But I think there's something to be gained out of that for sure. Absolutely. Like we did a kind of a home run derby event against the top hurling players a couple of years back. And we had Brett. I was teamed up with not that I'm not one of the biggest hitters in baseball by any means, but I was paired up with Brendan Cummins, the Tipperary goalkeeper. So we won it hands down. Brendan was tapping them over the outfield, over the fence. I was thinking he's going to break windows here, but we're always open-minded about trying to do novel stuff, and I think that's something that naturally lends itself, I think, to an event. So I definitely will have my full support, and I think if I can, I think the internal support of Baseball Ireland about trying to organise something like that as well.
Great. Well, Adrian, I just want to say thanks a million for taking the time to come on this, and to enlighten us on all those facts on baseball, and obviously that you have a very unique standpoint, having a foot in both camps, as it were. But guys, I just want to say, anyone watching at home, if you would have any interest in seeing maybe some sort of a compromised game, let us know, and we'll get on to the powers that be, try and get a bit of a movement going for it. But Adrian, thanks a million again.
Thanks very much, Darrell. It's been great to be on.
Take care.